Association's Network for Women in Marine Science, or WiMS. So WiMS is a network that brings together women from across marine science and conservation in the Western Indian Ocean. We recently celebrated International Women's Day on Sunday. So the theme this year was Balance the Scales, and today's discussion feels particularly timely. Bringing together gender and equity considerations in conservation planning is one way that we can help to ensure marine initiatives are fair, inclusive, and effective. So just to give you a little background on WiMS, for those that are unfamiliar, WiMS has aims to help balance these scales for women in the Western Indian Ocean by strengthening their connections, their visibility, and leadership skills across the region. Since its launch in 2017, WiMS has served as a strategic platform to support women and their engagement across marine science disciplines. We specifically aim to build capacity, to create safe spaces, and to strengthen institutional accountability. In practice, we focus on several core activities, including capacity development activities such as this webinar, technical training sessions, and professional skills development. We also have a mentoring program for peer learning and local and regional networking activities. So today's webinar is part of our ongoing collaboration with the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, or SwAM, to build capacity and to bring people together so that we can bring together gender and equity considerations more strongly into marine and coastal conservation work. So before we begin, I'd like to invite our colleagues from SwAM to introduce themselves and to say a few words about the collaboration.
Thank you, Annalise. Did you have my slides as well?
Yes, I think I've got your first slide should be showing.
Oh, maybe just me can't see it. But yeah, I just see your camera. No, I don't see it. Sorry.
Oh no! Okay, just a second. Let me.
You mirrored the wrong screen. Yeah.
I should have checked that beforehand. Okay, here we go. That now?
Okay, yeah, looks perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Maria Goffberg, and I represent the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management. We usually short call it SwAM. And as Annalise said, we are co-hosting today's webinar with WiMS, and I'm very glad to see so many of you taking your time to be with us here today. SwAM is a Swedish government agency, and we work on behalf of the government and the parliament. And we are the agency that's tasked to protect, restore, and ensure sustainable use of lakes, rivers, streams, and the sea, including fish resources here in Sweden. Next slide, please, Annalise. But today's webinar is carried out within our international development program called SwAM Ocean. With SwAM Ocean, we aim to promote a sustainable and climate-adapted blue economy, and we have a specific focus on 2 priority regions, which is the Western Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. And we do this by working in 3 thematic areas. We work to strengthen ocean governance and management of marine resources at regional and national level. We build capacity and provide tools to enhance countries' abilities to implement ecosystem-based and inclusive marine spatial planning. And for the theme that we're here to mostly talk about today, focus on strengthening protection and management of marine ecosystems. And the last slide then, please, Annalise. And through training and strategic frameworks like conservation standards, we build the capacity of regional and national actors to guide conservation project design, management, and monitoring. And we aim for an effective and lasting impact. We also integrate social perspectives like poverty and gender, for example, into our conservation efforts to benefit local welfare. And this is why the topic of today's webinar is of great interest to us. It fits right into what we want to do. So I am very much looking forward to listen to Oscar, Asma, and Sevani, and have a discussion with the rest of the participants as well. So thank you, WiMS, for good cooperation, and over to you, Annelise.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, so thank you for that, introduction to SwAM. Today's webinar is a workshop, actually, and it's an interactive learning session that's led by Oscar Maldonado. So Oscar is an anthropologist, ecologist, and geographer from Guatemala with more than 25 years of experience in natural resource management and biodiversity conservation planning, management, and evaluation. He has worked across 38 countries and collaborated with organizations including the Nature Conservancy, WWF, Conservation International, WCS, and the Jane Goodall Institute. His current work focuses on conservation strategic planning, monitoring and evaluation, and the development of tools such as this risk and negative side effect assessment that we'll hear about today. We also have with us Dr. Asma Hadi Awad to share her field experiences using this tool. She is a resource mobilization manager through the conservation programs at WWF Kenya, where she leads strategic partnerships and design of conservation initiatives. She has over 18 years of experience in environmental management, particularly in marine and coastal ecosystems, sustainable fisheries, and nature-based solutions. Her work focuses on community-centered conservation, integrating local livelihoods, gender considerations, and inclusive governance into the sustainable management of marine resources. We also have with us Sevani Pinyandi, who is a project coordination specialist with a background in marine ecology and biodiversity conservation. She has supported research projects on Amazonian biodiversity and helped strengthen collaboration among protected areas of the Guiana Shield and Mediterranean islands. She currently works with conservation stakeholders in the Southwest Indian Ocean and is focused on capacity building, knowledge sharing, and seed funding. So today's workshop is tightly packed, so we'll need to pay close attention to the time. I'll monitor the chat, but we have a questions and answer session. So right now we'll pass over to Oscar, who will follow with a questions and answer session. Asma and Sevani will give their field experiences, and then we'll go through some interactive exercises before we close. I ask that everyone please keep their mics and their cameras off for the moment. I pass over to you, Oscar.
Okay, thank you, Annelise. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. And here we go. Okay, thank you for the introduction, Annelise. What I'm going to present is something that comes from the need of understanding what can be wrong in conservation initiatives, particularly in this case in marine conservation initiatives. So that's the first question, why we need to have a risk and negative side effect assessment tool for conservation projects, and in particular for marine conservation projects. Well, risks and negative side effects may carry high social and economic costs for people and projects. There is always, in any conservation initiative, the obligation, the ethical obligation to people with whom we work, and to understand who can be affected by the project. Even if we have good intentions, our projects can carry some negative implications. So predicting risks and undesired negative side effects contributes to the successful implementation and the goal achievement of the projects. And here the bottom line is that these initiatives need to protect people, the environment, and the project. So this tool has been created to support the development of conservation initiatives by integrating this assessment, these considerations, since the very project design. The tool helps to anticipate what can go wrong in conservation projects and to plan accordingly. And it's applicable throughout the project cycle, but ideally, it works much better when we use it from the project planning and design phase to have a maximum impact.
Mm-hmm.
So the first consideration is to make sure we understand what are the risks and what are the negative side effects. Even if there are close relationships between risk and negative side effects, there are two different things. The risks are external circumstances which are independent to the project. However, they may hinder the project implementation, and preventing or mitigating these risks can ensure the project success. Whereas the negative side effects are caused by the project. They directly affect people, biodiversity, the environment, and the project. And since they are caused by the project has direct responsibilities to prevent, mitigate, or correct these effects. So as I mentioned, there is a close relationship. They are often related, but they differ in their causes, nature, and required responses. And I would say also in terms of the responsibility. So why having a closer lens with gender and diversity, equity, and inclusion? Risks and side effects are not neutral. Even when we apply this tool well, some risks may be hidden if social differentiation are not considered. Even well-intended interventions may still exclude or harm groups in different ways. And that happens in particularly in marine settings. And just as a quick reminder, women, men, youth, indigenous peoples, and other groups interact with marine resources in different ways. So informal and under-recognized marine resource users exist in the projects. We have small-scale, customary, or gendered marine practices that often are invisible to marine data systems. For instance, we focus a lot on fishing itself, but not on cleaning, on shellfish gathering, on intertidal algae harvesting, for instance. Interventions can unintentionally disrupt livelihoods not officially recognized. And marine conservation is planned from the boat, so in the sea, and not necessarily from the shore, where women and other groups operate. There is also a gender division of labor in marine economies. In many coastal communities, men dominate offshore fishing, but women work inshore or in post-harvest, drying, selling, shellfish gathering, to name a few of the activities that women and other groups do. Most of marine planning focuses on production, the catch, but not on processing, on the trade or taking, where women dominate. There is also an important cultural aspect that needs to be considered for many indigenous people and local people, reefs, estuaries, and other marine environments are not just ecological spaces, but also have a spiritual meaning. And they anchor the local identity as well. Risks here may include the erasure or displacement through the fortress conservation of some design zoning schemes that do not respect these cultural considerations. So I need to thank this group of beautiful, intelligent, and smart women who helped me out to analyze the tool, how it works, and how we can strengthen the gender and diversity, inclusion, and equity lens. And also, I need to thank to many people who have reviewed the tool. I just see the participants in this webinar, and some of them are here. So thanks to all these people as well. So what's the tool about? What in terms of the methodology, how it works? We have 5 steps. The first one is identifying risks and negative side effects in the theory of change of the project. So usually we work this tool and it works very well using the conservation standards approach, which is the leading conservation planning methodology. And it's not just for planning, it's for project management. And through this tool, we emphasize a lot on developing the theory of change for the projects. And the graphic, the graphic version of the theory of change is called the result chains. So I'm going to show you an example. The second step is through this graphic tool, the result chains, to analyze the probability and magnitude of each risk and negative side effect identified. So this is going to help us out to scheme out what really counts and to work more in depth in the risk and negative side effects that have high probability to happen. Then for those, we try to identify mitigation measures and we integrate those mitigation measures in the project design. And there are different ways by which we can incorporate these mitigation measures in the project. And finally, we identify indicators that help us to track that the risks are and negative side effects are controlled, and we can check that our mitigation measures are working. So this is a results chain for people who don't know this methodology well. What we do here is that we fragment our theory of change in different conditions or changes that we want to achieve in order to reach our final impact at the end of the day. For instance, this initiative, which focuses in promoting sustainable fishing practices, aims to have sustainable fisheries and conserving the fish stocks. And we have 3 intermediate results. One is that empowered community fishers and authorities strengthen their collaboration. And this brings us to the next result, which is community fishers agree on marine protected area boundaries and rules, and fishers comply with no-take zones. So this is a very simple example just for you to understand how this diagram works. So there is a cause-effect relationship between all these results. And I should say that often reality is not that simple, and these diagrams could be much more complex than just a linear series of results. So here we can identify, for instance, a risk. External features are still illegally catching. And we can have a negative side effect, reduce short-term catch flow features. So these are the kind of situations we may encounter in a project. So the idea here is to ask ourselves, what can we do for these things, to prevent these things to happen, or to correct if these things are going to happen anyways, how the project can correct the effects of these and mitigate their effects. So as I mentioned, this tool works much better when we have this graphic analysis on how our initiative is going to work out. So the first step, as I mentioned, is start by identifying what can go wrong in a general overview of these diagrams. If necessary, we can review each box by box, but usually the risk and negative side effects pop up almost immediately when we analyze them. But eventually we can go box by box and trying to identify what can go wrong. The problem of doing this exercise this way is that we tend to identify a lot of risk and negative side effects, and some of them are not necessarily relevant. So these ones that are not necessarily relevant really hide what are really relevant indeed. And we classify them as risk or negative side effects. As I mentioned, these two are not the same. When we do this in community workshops, or what I try to do, and I recommend, is to rotate and switch working groups, because it's always easier to find out what can go wrong in the works of others. So this works very well indeed. And something that is very important is to make sure that we clearly determine who will be harmed by the risk and the negative side effect. Okay, what are the gender considerations that came from our workshop in Mombasa, where we try to use and incorporate gender and DEI considerations? First, it's very important to conduct a comprehensive and gender-focused stakeholder analysis prior to the risk and negative side effect assessment. It's very important to really understand what are the subgroups. In many stakeholder analyses I've checked, women are a specific group. And that could be good, but women are not equal in communities. There are also differences within the woman group. There are rich women, there are poor women, there are women who own land, there are women who are landless, there are women that are marginalized in many different ways. So we need to take into the considerations these social differentiations within the subgroups. And of course, it's very important to keep in mind the purpose and scope of the project. Maybe we can go very deep into these social differentiations, and maybe some of these social differentiations do not apply for our conservation initiative. So it's very important to keep in mind the purpose and the scope of the project. This is very important to emphasize because Normally, when we use the conservation standards methodology for planning a conservation initiative, this stakeholder analysis comes with a methodology. But if you don't apply the conservation standards methodology and you only use this risk and negative side effect assessment tool, it's very important to conduct this gender-focused stakeholder analysis. It's also important to develop a list of generic potential risk and negative side effects with a gender focus. What can go wrong specifically to women and other social minorities in your project scope? And this could be used as an adaptable guide in the process of using this methodology. And then it's also good to elaborate guiding questions to ensure that gender and vulnerable groups issues are not overlooked in the exercise. So again, this is an example. This is a very simplified example of another strategy that focuses on developing tourism activity in a marine protected area. So in this diagram, we have the results that the important results that we want to achieve in our conservation strategy. And then we have in these gray boxes what are some of the risks that may happen. And we would like to understand them better and define what will be the mitigation or the mitigation measures that we can undertake. The step 2. It's important to assess the magnitude and probability of the risk and negative side effects so that we can scheme out what really is important. So we have 2 variables here, 2 criteria that we want to assess. The first one is the magnitude, which is the expected level of damage in depth and in pervasiveness caused by risk or negative side effects to people, but also to nature or the project. And the probability, which is the likelihood of the risk of negative side effect to occur. And this is going to give us some criteria for deciding if we need to include them in the list of risk and negative side effects for developing mitigation measures and how we're going to incorporate this mitigation measure in our project. So these are the you're going to have a table like this one, and always a good suggestion is to think what is going to be rated high and very high, and to drop what is going to be low or medium. Then we want to analyze the probability and in this step of analyzing the probability of magnitude, the considerations that we have included is to differentiate the probability and magnitude ratings by gender or by other affected groups. So something that may happen may harm differently different groups in our project scope. So it's very important to conduct this in a disaggregated way and to use this disaggregated analysis to target specifically people who are going to be more affected by the risk of negative side effects. And that's a good suggestion also to consider the time component, as risk and negative side effects may materialize in different time frames. And then we have the identification of mitigation measures. So each high or very high rated risk or negative side effect needs to have at least one mitigation measure. And there are three tips that we can considerate. The prevention, which is what we really want to emphasize, is avoiding the risk of the negative side effect. The mitigation, which is about reducing or managing the damage, and then the correction, which is about repair the damage or restore. And this should be considered as our last resort. So this is, again, the same example I showed you before. And here we have included the mitigation measures. So the third step is to identify these mitigation measures, and what we found out here that could be the considerations for emphasizing on gender and diversity, equity, and inclusion, while developing differentiated mitigation measures that are tailored to the most affected group and stakeholders. And embed accountability mechanisms to track and follow up on mitigation measures, particularly for the ones that are rated the highest. So we need to do monitoring, which is included already in the methodology, and also include grievance mechanisms. The step 4 is to decide whether and how to include the mitigation measure in the project. So we can add in our result chains new results that have to do with this mitigation measure, and including in our project specific objectives on how we want this result to happen. Or we can include them as work activities as in the work plan as activities or tasks that we need to implement in our project. And very seldom, actually, I've been applying the tool for 10 years or more. We need to develop an independent strategy for tackling this risk or negative side effects.
Oscar, you have 5 minutes.
I know. So this is how this is going to look like. We can incorporate these mitigation measures in our result chain, but some of these activities could be also included as activities in our work plan. Okay, and finally, we integrate the mitigation measures in the project. So here we need to ensure that all the key mitigation measures are somehow included in the project design. And we need to ensure that project monitoring and review is implemented. A synoptic table helps us to synthesize all these results, including the fifth one, which is the one that comes next, is identifying at least one indicator for all the mitigation measures that we have included. And here as well, we need to specify on differentiated indicators. We want to foster and promote community monitoring and eventually request an external audit. Bring results to adaptive management. This tool works for the conservation standards, which is an adaptive management tool. And report back on results for the matter of transparency. So we don't need to miss all the opportunities we can have to communicate, share results, and learn, in particular with the focal groups. And this is, I think, my last slide. Some suggestions, methodological suggestions. The first one, as I mentioned, is the group rotation. This is going to help us out to see things that we don't see when we work on developing the strategies. To prioritize the discussion on high risk items. Again, that's why it's so important to understand what is the probability and magnitude of each risk and negative side effect. To engage all the interested parties actively, ensure that local communities participate in this assessment, allocate sufficient time. This is going to work much better if we have time to step back, review, probe, and refine our findings. And last but not least, it's very important to foster a safe, respectful space for the dialogue and the discussion. And this is it. I think I did good on time. We even have 2 extra minutes for some questions.
Thank you, Oscar. Yes, that was perfect timing. If we have any questions, please raise your hand and we will take any questions at this point. Okay, I've got Abshir. Would you like to go ahead, please?
Yeah, and I salute you all, ladies and gentlemen. It's a nice place, but I don't have much words to say. But I want to ask you, will you offer us certificate that certifies that we have attended this session and benefit from the lecture? Will you offer us a certificate? Thank you.
I'm not sure if I had problems listening. Abshir, Annelise, could you repeat the question? Maybe.
Yeah, I believe Abshir was asking if there are certificates that can be provided following the
okay.
training.
I think I'm not the one who can answer that question. Maybe Maria can help us to understand that question.
Yeah, thank you, Oscar. Well, the short answer is no, we're not providing certificates to take part of the webinar and the training here today. Sorry.
Okay, but normally we have attended the session and get benefit from the lecture and get the whole concept and the idea in the session. So, and always as a human being, we like to get something that certify who we are and what we have done. So it's like that. And even an official certificate is not important, but it's important to get something that could indicate that we have attended a session and about women and they. That's my point.
Okay, well, I know when we have the brieflet ready that Oscar is presenting and the DEI gender lens, we will circulate that and you can use that as showing that you were here. But I don't think we have anything more official than that. If we do, then maybe Sarah or someone else from WiMS or WiOMSA could jump in. But that's all I can think of.
Great. Does anybody else have a question for Oscar?
Okay, I don't see hands raising. So Jennifer is asking if it's possible to share the presentation. I can share PDF of the presentation, of course. But more importantly, I can share the tool. I think the tool is going to be is on the design phase. I mean, the tool exists already printed, but the incorporations that we did after the workshop in Mombasa, where we analyze how to enhance the gender and DEI lens, is on design right now, and it's going to be, I think, available hopefully quite shortly. And we can share the tool as well, for sure. Yeah. I saw a hand raised and then I can't find it anymore.
Yeah, hello. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, this is Kamweti, and thank you for that informative discussion. Just a quick one, maybe looking at more of the mechanics of how you help a group, determine what is of a certain risk level, and also prioritizing. How do you go about that? How do you help them come to maybe a consensus, or and does it involve external expertise, or is it entirely within the participating group of stakeholders? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Normally, if your project is community-based project, you should use the methodology at community levels and to try to involve as many groups as you have in your community. That's why the stakeholder analysis is so important. So you don't miss out anyone in participating in the assessment. And you can have a lot of input from them in the assessment. There are some considerations, and these considerations may vary from project to project. Maybe there are some projects where people can speak up more easily in big get-togethers, but there are some other projects that are implemented in communities where women speak up more freely. If they are only in a women group, you can organize a workshop with women separated of the workshop with the rest of the community members. And I think this is more an art rather than science, in that knowing and understanding the communities you're working with will help you to understand what would be the best way for you to apply the tool. There are one important consideration that that you need to take into account is to have already your strategies or interventions pre-designed, because it's going to be on your interventions pre-designed where you're going to focus the analysis, and in that design where you're going to include your mitigation measures. I think that's the way I would answer your question. And then you mentioned how you can prioritize the risk, the negative side effects, and the respective mitigation measures. This is in step number 2, when you need to assess what is the probability for the risk or negative side effect to happen. And then if it happens, what is going to be the magnitude? What is going to be the level of harm that is going to do in to make in people, the environment, biodiversity, and the project. And this is going to give you the criteria on and say, okay, this is a high priority. I need to tackle this issue.
Okay, great. Thanks, Oscar. I think there's one more question that we have time for. Jennifer has a question in the chat for field officers. Is that okay? Yeah. Field officers like myself working in remote areas like North Kenya Seascape. How can I make the 5-step R+NSE framework quick and easy to use during our weekly community engagements and check-ins?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's a matter of making people comfortable with the methodology, which of course requires a lot of facilitation skills. This is something that I recommend to not be thrifty on time when you do this exercise, but I also recommend not to last forever in doing this analysis. Normally, a very well-conducted one-day workshop will suffice if you have the right people on board. And it should be considered as something that helps you project design, not as something that is an extra step. It's something that makes the way I developed the methodology is to be integrated in your project design so that you can integrate it in very seamlessly in your participatory workshops. So you can work on one day, often maybe 2 days when you can, when you want to analyze a whole project. But if it's well facilitated, you can do it in 1 day, I would say.
Great. Thank you so much, Oscar. This wraps up the question and answer session for the moment, a very quick one. Now we will switch over to field experiences. I'd like to invite Asma to begin her testimony. Thanks.
Thank you, Annelise, and thank you, Oscar, for the presentation. It was good to hear it again, as much as I spent with you 2 days in the workshop. Just to share with everyone that I am Asma. I work with WWF Kenya, and I consider myself somebody who already approaches conservation with a very strong awareness of gender and community dimensions. However, I was caught off guard to realize in this workshop that if we do not have a gender lens in front there and as a requirement, it's very easy for me and anyone else to forget. And as Oscar shared, there was a room, it was just women participants, and all of us in totality forgot about that. Anyway, sometimes we don't completely forget to include gender. Sometimes we do, but maybe in a very small way. To share my examples, in my current role, I support designing of programs, and this is why it's very good at this level. You can, make the changes in the programs early on so that they have a better integration of gender and also marginalized groups, inclusion. So I'll give an example. We were developing a program on institutional clean cooking concepts, which is to be submitted to the Mitigation Action Facility. Now, in this project, we were to support 2,000 institutions in Kenya to transit from fuel wood to solar-powered electric systems for cooking and also other energy needs. And rightfully, very early on, we identified that most of the people employed as cooks in most of these institutions In fact, our concept said more than 50% of the cooking staff are women, and these are going to be beneficiaries because they are currently exposed to smoke, heat, heavy workloads associated with wood-based cooking, and therefore that was sufficient for the initial project writers as involvement of women. But this is where Oscar says you need to look at this project and see, are you really involving women meaningfully? Are you involving them, in all aspects? So, and when you see the gap, and in this case, yes, there was a gap because the project operates across a bigger system. We had not considered women participation in the value chain, their participation as suppliers, as installers, as service providers, as technicians involved in the deployments and maintenance of the electric cooking system. Now, when you apply this lens of, identifying early on negative side effects or identifying who you are leaving out early on, then you are able to rewrite some objectives, or planned outcomes, or objectives, or you are able to even include ones that you had initially left out. And in this case, we were able to include women across the different areas of the value chain. And this was reflected in the result framework, and it had accompanying outcomes and indicators, across the value chain, technical training and service provision. Now, in this way, the project not only improved the working conditions of the women who are cooking, but also creates an economic opportunity, creates an equitable economic opportunity for women within this emerging area of clean cooking. What I can say that would be helpful is I can see already Oscar is using Miradi, so maybe integrating this more, because currently when we use it on our end in conservation, we just look at conservation outcomes, but we need to look at also the economic and social outcomes. And also maybe once the tool is shared now formally, we can use it in different institutions and come back with, more practical. Okay, of course we have, we were in the workshop and we have tried to see how it works, but then maybe from a bigger group, we can get more input. As a concluding remark, I would like to say that this tool and the training was a good reminder that conservation planning is not just about ecological success, which myself as a conservationist and many people who are conservationists, that's the first thing we look at. But also it is important to anticipate how our conservation intervention interact with the social systems and ensure that protecting the ecosystems, while doing it, we do not leave out unintentionally some people behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esma. I'll go straight over to Savani for her remarks as well.
Thank you, Annalise. Hello, everyone. So I will join Asma on her remarks, saying that this workshop was very eye-opening for us as well, because we are really aware about gender balance, gender equity, but we really didn't realize how much a project could have an impact on really mostly including women and DEI. So for us, it was very interesting because we had tools, proper tools as well, reflections, sharing experiences that really apply to what we were doing, even though we were aware that we should have more gender balance in all our activities. Just to put some context, so we implement a regional cooperation project on island territories in the Southwest Indian Ocean, where we provide trainings and small grants to project leaders and marine areas practitioners. So this workshop was very perfect timing because we were nearly at the end of the project, and it was, in this transition where we had to think about the next phase, how to improve ourselves, and it was really lessons learned. So we took a step back, and we, as Oscar mentioned earlier, we applied this gender and DEI lens to what we did for these past years and how we can improve it to better have gender equity and DEI equity in all of our actions for the next phase. And while applying this lens, we try to, with these tools, we have we're really in the early stages of our reflections, but we have seen possibilities to unlock obstacles to be able to involve more women, to not only involve participation of women, just to increase the gender ratio, but also to involve them in decision making and have a say, and to be really not have these negative side effects. So for us, it was very interesting to have these reflections. I would give an example, for example, for our small grants. We have a majority of project leaders who are male, and we asked them, and also beneficiaries who are male, and then we asked them, why couldn't you involve more women in your visit exchanges, in your projects? And then they told us, well, sometimes it's difficult because of security to involve more women to go and visit another site. And for us, it gave us clues on how to improve that. So we said maybe in the next phase of grants, we'll be able to have additional funding, another line of budget where we could have like a car only for women, so that we create this safe space for women to be involved in these projects. Another examples of what we're thinking how we are thinking to improve our actions, for example, trainings. We have been training since 2023 marine areas practitioners, some of them young women, and then at some point we didn't see them in our trainings, and we just asked, okay, where are they? Have they moved to another job? And some of them became mothers. So then we asked ourselves, okay, maybe we didn't create this safe space for them to participate. Maybe we didn't create enough, enough social safeguards for them to be able to apply to our training, or we were not very open about how we could involve them more. So for us, it's very important to improve these social safeguards so that we can say, if you are a young mother, we should cater for your young child to come and come to the training and be able to train and move up on the social ladder and in terms of competences. So for us, it's really about this, taking the step back and analyzing where it didn't go well, how we lost these gender minority groups, and how to more involve them, and what are the levers that we could use to moving forward. So that would be my takeaways from the workshop in Mombasa.
Great. Thank you so much, Savani. Thank you both, Asma and Savani, for your comments and your experiences. Oscar, would you like to respond?
Yes, I'm very happy and that you have already applied the workload that we did in Mombasa. It's a pity that we cannot have the opportunity to do this kind of workshops more often, but I feel very, very glad and that you have used this tool, and you have used it not necessarily at the project design, because you have already interventions going on, but also to check out how the tool could be applied in other parts of your project, particularly to review how well you're doing in what you were doing. So those are very good news for me. And I definitely would like to talk a little bit more in depth on how this works in other phases of the project cycle. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences, Savani and Asma.
Great, wonderful. Now, Oscar, it's time for the interactive exercises. So I'll leave it to you to guide us through this section.
Okay, so there are some considerations I need to tell you. The idea was to do this in breakout groups, but we are quite a number today. So I would pick some of your ideas to do a very quick and dirty negative side effect assessment. And we're going to use the chat because I'm going to ask you some questions, and you need to give me your answers in the chat. And I'm going to pick some of them to complete this exercise. Okay. This is what we have. This is an initiative that seeks to strengthening local governance in for protecting critical habitats. So our aim is to restore essential habitats for shark-like rays and to improve the viability of these shark-like rays that are threatened by destructive fishing. So this is what this initiative suggests to do. I have a question for you. Can you all see my screen? Okay, that's very important. Okay, yes. Perfect. Is this readable?
Very small.
Okay, let me just make it a little bit larger. I hope this is this better? Let me just, okay. Is this better? I hope.
Yes, I think it's better.
Okay. So here we have a series of results that change themselves in the cause-effect relationship to get to this reduction of destructive fishing. So you have to have some consensus achieved amongst diverse stakeholders about the designation of the marine protected area. And this, if we have this consensus, we can have a locally accepted no-take zone boundaries and rules established. And then this is going to bring us to two results. One is that traditional leaders are going to support the habitat conservation through local rules, but also it's going to be a rule enforcement role shared between the local community and the authorities. So this is going to make marine management integrated into broader community development discussions. And this is going to help us out to make community comply with rules and no-take zones. And community is going to respect the seasonal closures. So the first question for you is, can you foresee, can you anticipate in this theory of change or result chain diagram something that can go wrong when we implement this strategy? And this is a question for you. What can go wrong here? And please type in the chat room. Okay, Ottilia is launching the discussion. Traditional leaders may exclude women in the community. Maybe this goes here. Anyone else has an idea? Linda says that lack of support to establish oops. Okay. Maybe this goes here. Akamweti mentioned a very good one, which is women don't have sufficient time to effectively participate and implement. That's a good one. And maybe I'm going to place these two here. Okay, so we have now the idea here is to check if these are risks or are negative side effects. Linda, can you tell me if the lack of support to establish MPAs and no-take zones would be a risk or a negative side effect? Do you remember the difference between one and the other? Risk is something that happens regardless of the project and is external to the project, whereas negative side effect is caused by the project. Okay, I'm having some other ideas here that are important, but we're going to work only on these first three. We don't have too much time, so we want to finalize this exercise. But I just want to mention, Vincent mentioned that negative perception of the community towards establishment of the marine protected area and cultural barriers. Linda, just write on the chat if you consider that what you propose is a risk or a negative side effect.
Oscar, I can see in the chat that Linda has answered that her microphone isn't on, but it would be a risk, she said.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree that this is a risk. This hasn't been caused by the project. Then we have the traditional leaders may exclude women in the community. And I think that was your suggestion, Ottilia.
Yes,
Can
correct.
you tell me if this is a risk or a negative side effect?
I think it's a risk
Okay.
of the project, in the sense that if we're only having dialogue with the traditional leaders, we might accidentally miss some women group that are important in the community.
Yes, I agree. And then we have that other card that I added here. Women don't have sufficient time to effectively participate and implement. Would this be a risk or a negative side effect?
That will be a risk.
Okay. Okay, I think this is interesting because we identified a lot of risks, but not necessarily negative side effects. And yes, I think you very well captured the idea of what's a risk is something that is external to the project implementation. But if we implement and we achieve these results, and that's a question for all of us, do we think that something can go wrong? Something of our intervention, which is well-intentioned, could harm someone?
Can you repeat your question, Oscar? Sorry.
We have risks mostly. What you suggested in the chat are mostly risks. But my question for you is, do we identify a potential negative side effect as well? Something that because
Oscar,
of
I'm not sure this has been mentioned. Maybe it has. I dropped for a minute. I'm thinking because of the project, like the no-tech zones could reduce short-term incomes for fishers. That's a negative side effect.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. And this is caused by the project.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one. Let's pick one risk and one negative side effect. And let's do the rest of the process. Okay, this is a hypothetical case, so we're going to have a hypothetical answer here. What would be the probability and magnitude that to have this lack of support? I assume local support from the community. What would be the probability that this could happen? Could be a low probability, a medium probability, or a high or very high probability. And who proposed this? Linda? No, yeah. Okay. Linda says it depends on the context and assessments prior to the project, of course. But I would say medium to high. Okay. Let's say it's going to be a high probability. And it's very important. She said something that is very right, is that this depends on the context and the assessment prior to the project. And if people oppose us, if we have a strong opposition from locals, what will be the magnitude of the project? I assume the magnitude could be very high because locals are opposing the no-take zones. Okay, and now this comes to the mitigation measure. We require some creativity. What can we do for mitigating or preventing this to happen and allow us to have a successful implementation of the no-take zones? And before we propose our ideas, Dativa Rogers mentioned a very good negative side effect about conflicts may arise between fishers and law enforcement officials, of course. Okay, so I have some proposals for mitigating this. Maria mentioned that is to explain the upside of implementing no-take zones in community dialogues. That could be an activity that we can implement. I'm going to explain. Oops. I just noted one, but Pauline mentioned exchange visits to those no-take zones or MPAs that are doing well. Very good. That could be part of the explanation. Linda mentioned strong dialogue and trust building with the local community. For instance, during the dialogue, you might find out that they want to no-take zones during a different time of the year or in a completely different area. Local communities know what they need. That's a very interesting point, Linda, because it also helps. And this is very important. I want to raise your idea because often mitigation measures are not necessarily something extra that you need to do, but something that can help you to shape the things that you're going to do in a better way so that you can prevent risks or mitigate or prevent negative side effects. That's a very good example. I would say that it's a sterling example of how you often don't need to develop something new, but using what you have already developed, and you can reshape in a much better and effective way. And introduction of alternative means of income. This is a very good one, Pauline, the one that you mentioned, that could help us to work on this negative side effect. Okay, I think, no, that's a negative side effect. I think Pauline mentioned introduction of alternative means of income, which I think works very well for this negative side effect. Okay. So when I think I'm, no, I still have 5 minutes. So this could be integrated in the project as an activity, let's say, but it could be also a result. And look how this result chain would work if we add a result here. And the result of this explanation could be something like communities are aware of the upside of implementing no-take zones. And your activity here could be established community dialogues. So if you have these results beforehand here, and this is the way this works, if you have this result here prior this one, we have more support to establish MPAs and no-take zones. And your indicator here could be the number of people who accept the creation of no-take zones. So this is the way it usually works. Questions? We have 1 minute. And I'm glad we are receiving other mitigation measures for the risk of no-take zones may reduce household income, provide good ideas on alternative sources of income to people. But more than just provide, I think it's to implement and develop projects on these alternative sources of income for people. Okay. We still have 1 minute if someone has a new suggestion or a question.
Oscar, if I could just ask a question. What would be a good mitigation measure for the risk that women don't have sufficient time to effectively participate?
I will raise that question to the group and to propose what could be a good mitigation measure or a mitigation approach that project could have in order to reduce this risk. I think this is a risk for sure, but this is a social condition, and I usually find this condition in different projects. And if you paid attention, my last slide has a picture, and it's a woman in Zanzibar who plays a card on a result and says it increases the burden for women. And yes, and we have this. I mean, this huge risk usually in projects when we think that because women are not participating, they have the time, the full time to participate. And I think this depends on different projects and different cases. But I think activities of the project need to consider what are the time constraints of people. For instance, and not just for like household activities or whatsoever, but many other activities like traditional festivities, and all these kind of activities that are not necessarily on the radar of conservation planners. So we need to consider that most of the activities of the projects could increase the burden for women and for other groups that are busy already with their day-to-day activities. And we need to planify, to make a good planning in a way that they can invest the time that they have to invest in these activities, or that these activities are organized in a way that they don't create any extra burden to the people who are going to implement those activities or who are going to participate in those activities. And again, this is going to be a case-to-case scenario. And of course, ideally, these ways on how we can mitigate this important risk should come from the women themselves.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Oscar. I think that's a great point to wrap up today's session. So thank you so much. For everyone, today's session, we were able to walk through how to anticipate these different risks and unintended consequences of conservation work, and as well as how to apply this gender and DEI lens, particularly to ensure that marine and coastal initiatives are more inclusive, equitable, and ultimately more effective, so your project can be more effective. We hope that the discussion today has provided some useful ideas and practical inspiration for applying this risk and negative side effect tool in your own work. We'll be sending out the finalized tool, the presentation, and the recording of this session in the next weeks. So on behalf of WiMS and our partners at SwAM, we'd like to thank you again for joining us. We look forward to continuing these conversations and collaborations across the Western Indian Ocean. We'd like to thank very much to our speakers, Oscar, Savani, and Asma, for their insights and experiences today, as well as to our organizers at WiMS and SwAM, and to all of you for your thoughtful questions and discussion. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day.